I think it's definitely time to encompass and evolve for races, as well as all the running type of companies that are involved, that they really go around and ensure that they are understanding their audience.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 202 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am excited that you are here, and I have a great guest lined up for you. As you have noticed, I have been covering more people of color over the previous few weeks, and I think that is important. I said in that initial episode at the beginning of August that I felt it was important that I highlighted some people who I'm really looking up to and learning a lot from. And that doesn't just mean checking a box kind of just to do it because everyone else is doing it, but because these people are leaders within their industry, some of them that you may have heard of, others you may not. And so I wanted to do kind of a month of featuring these people that I think are making big changes and I'm excited for and seeing them doing great things. So I hope you are enjoying these episodes. We are addressing racism within the episodes, but we're also covering other things. We're covering their opinions on running and things that they've learned within their own industry and their own version of running. And then also about them just in general, because these people just have interesting lives that I think we could all learn from and grow from. So I'm excited that I will get to introduce you today to Alex Will. But before that, I just want to tell you, last week we had Aaron and Joshua Potts on the show, who are the hosts of the Two Black Runners podcast. That was a really interesting episode where we kind of broke down. It was more focused on the track and field side of things. That is Aaron and Josh's passion, and I love the way that they have brought this podcast out of theirs, and they're really kind of speaking from their heart, even if they are saying things that maybe at times maybe a bit risky but need to be said. So I'm glad that they did call out someone for an insensitive thing that they said, and I'm glad that we were able to have that conversation last week to really kind of elevate what they're doing. And I hope you have gone to check out their podcast because I've really been enjoying it. Now, today, as I mentioned, we do have Alex Will on the show, and I'm excited to introduce you to Alex because I think she is someone who not many people have heard of. As you will hear in this episode, I found her by creeping on someone else's profile and who they follow, but she has a lot of value to give us. She has a lot of insight that she's going to share with us. And I learned a lot in this episode, and I enjoyed talking to Alex, and I look forward to seeing where she goes in the future as she talks about her goals and what things she wants to do. And I think we can all learn and grow from the messages that Alex has to share with us. So without me going on any much longer than I already have, I'm just going to take a moment to thank our sponsor, and we'll be right to the episode. Thank you to Generation UCAN for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, I have told you for many years how I love using UCANs in marathons, in half marathons, in all my races as my pre-race fuel and my during race fuel. I relied on UCAN solely for my best marathon, my PR marathon of 2:36. It was the only fuel source I had during the race, and I trust it completely. Now, I've told you about that for many years. I love Generation UCAN. However, I have been finding a new use for it in this kind of stage of my life where I'm not racing, have no plans on racing, and I think many of you are in the same boat. UCAN has been just such a good daily source for me of getting in some extra calories, getting in things quick, because it's very important for us as runners to be able to consume some calories to get our body recovering immediately after exercise. And I am not the best at doing that. So the Generation UCAN chocolate peanut butter bars are my favorite. They also have some new flavors out, so you can be sure to give those a try. But I also love to put a scoop or two of the vanilla protein powder in my smoothie, which I have every day. I throw in some spinach, throw in some peaches, some mangoes, maybe some berries if I feel like it. I love to kind of have a tropical version right now as it is still warm. But throwing in a scoop of UCAN, it kind of makes it like peaches and cream flavor, which I absolutely love. I also put a scoop of peanut butter in there and maybe some chia seeds or hemp seeds. So I love to put UCAN in my smoothie. It's just a really great thing to have every day. And I really think if you have not given it a try, you will enjoy it. If you have not tried UCAN, you can get 25% off your first order with code TINAMUIR25. That's TINAMUIR 25. Or you can get 15% off if you're a returning customer by using code TINAUCAN15. So I'll say those again, TINAMUIR25 for 25% off if you're a first-time customer. Or you can get TINAUCAN15 to get 15% off if you are a returning customer. Again, the peanut butter chocolate bars, I have one at least one every day. Absolutely love them. And I sometimes put them in the fridge right now to give it a bit of a different texture. And the vanilla protein powder is my favorite, with the Cranraz energy powder being my favorite for kind of on-the-go fuel if you are training for a race this fall. Give it a try and you will not regret trying Generation UCAN. Alex, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running for Real podcast. I am excited you are here.
I am too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Alison Desir because it was some serious creeping on her profile, who she follows, that I came across you. And I just loved you from the start. And I just love looking at your Twitter account, as much as that makes me sound really weird, because you just say the things that you want and that you think in a way that is so relatable, but it's also inspiring. Because I mentioned to you, I think, when I first connected with you about how Alex likes to share kind of big goals she has, and she puts them out there. You know, those things that we all have or we think about, like, oh, I'd love to do that someday. She writes it out to the world, and I love that you do that. And I said to you, I don't have the confidence to do that yet, but someday. So to start off, maybe give us a few things that you do have on that list. So if anyone listening coincidentally has some way of helping you on that goal, pick wisely, but pick 3 that you could share.
Oh gosh, let's see. I feel like I should go back to Twitter. But I think I've been writing my goals every day. So the main goal right now is optimal health. And that is a internal and external thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really big on losing weight. I'm really thinking about how am I living healthy for myself in an optimal way. So that optimal part definitely has evolved in not just having great blood pressure or cholesterol or all of that, but really the environment that I'm living in, mm-hmm. what routines that I have, some habits that are good, bad, or need to be improved. And so that is a huge goal of mine. Yeah. The second thing that goes to it is definitely I'm going to be moving out of Texas. So that is a huge, I am born and raised in Texas, love my state dearly, but it is time to finally move and leave and spread my wings. So really would love to be in the DMV area. And then the third.
Wait, where is DMV?
Oh, sorry. Acronym for the DC, Maryland, Virginia area.
Okay. Probably everyone listening is like, duh. But I didn't know what that was. Okay. Thank you.
Wait, are you going to the DMV, like, for license or something like that? About 5 years ago, I went there for the first time. I did kind of this road trip from meeting a few people in Jersey and decided to take a road trip down there. I never did a road trip on the East Coast and heard all about it all the time from my dad doing it. So I had a fantastic time from Jersey to the DC area, ended up in Virginia as well as Maryland. And since then, I went that one time very quickly and continued on. And it's increased to where my phone is like, I basically live there.
I've heard of quite a few people doing that, where they've gone to visit somewhere for like a week and they've been like, I love it here. And they make it like their mission to eventually get out there. So I love that you are doing that and have found your place. And third one.
Third is definitely this, I'm kind of not really secretive on it, but it's definitely an improvement in my running. I think I improve every year, but this year I'm putting some numbers and goals to that. So hitting my half marathon goal of sub 2:35. And then, of course, my long-term marathon goal is to hit all six majors. So that's going to take a little bit longer than what I expected. But next year, I'll be doing London and Berlin. I'm going to assume that London at this time is officially canceled for the fall. I can't go anywhere being an American anyway. But next year, London and Berlin are two more stars that I have. And then after that, Boston and Tokyo will be next. So.
That's exciting. And I have to say that London is the best one, in case you didn't know. No, I don't know. I know people prefer Boston from what I was speaking to, and I'm sure people in other countries think the other ones are better. But for me, London is definitely the best. And not just because I'm from there. I do live here. So I am in the US. So I can say I've done both. Okay. All right. So you're a communications director for a nonprofit which offers counseling and mental health services for children and families in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Now, I'm assuming when you say you want to move, you want to continue doing something like that. But tell us about why you chose that as a career path and just what you do with that. What does that mean?
Actually, I don't know how I stumbled upon that position. I'm always looking and extending my time out. But as a communication director for the nonprofit, I was really, there's two things. One, I looked to see what they were currently doing, which really wasn't a lot of marketing at all. A lot of things were outdated. Social media had barely been posted on. And so for that, as a marketing person, I got very excited to be able to go in and clean house, so to speak. It's a spring cleaning because everything is outdated. And being able to take that and share my passion and love and then show what they were doing, what we currently could be doing, and then build upon that. And so that was a very fun experience from a marketing side. And then also being able to step into a nonprofit area where professionally I hadn't been before. I've always worked for corporate. So they gave me experience in another light to actually see what does it feel like doing marketing for a nonprofit, and Christian at that, understanding their backgrounds, their donors, very, very different audiences, from board to donors to actual clients. And then I had expansion in between at that time. So it's a lot of marketing things, but I enjoyed my time and I enjoyed the experience that I did learn. And most importantly, seeing the day-to-day of how people were improved or came out to an event from, spending $20 on a Facebook ad. I was able to pack house on one of the, events that the company had for helping women who were pregnant and getting them diapers. We had a diaper drive that we had so many diapers and not enough women. And then we had the reverse issue the following time. So, that's not something that, not saying that my background and experience isn't the same, but, it's different in corporate America. Sometimes you don't get a chance to actually see the result, but I got to see the result day in and day out just because I was there. And so that experience is with me forever.
And how has your job or how has the nonprofit been affected by what's happened this year? Have they seen like an uptick in people needing things, and what have you had to do with that?
Overall, I would say every nonprofit has been hugely impacted, from laying off staff to increasing salaries or cutting benefits on that end, to just the need of supplies and donations. Here locally, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I know that tons of food banks, our biggest one, our North Texas, food bank, they were needing donations left and right to purchase items because, unemployment was backed up. So, people weren't able to get food stamps and those type of services. So they were looking around to food banks. And, when everyone's impacted, in a community at the same time as we've been, nonprofits have never had to deal with this. They're used to, in a year in advance or looking forward. I mean, most nonprofits have had at least 100 to 300% increase in people coming through their doors or needing services. And so, I mean, they've had to make cuts. They've had to change a lot of things in the focus. But, overall, everyone's pulling together in various ways that they can to help each other out during this time.
Yeah. So I guess that's for everyone listening, and myself included, we need to, go support your nonprofit that means something to you, or one in your local area. They are struggling, and that might be a group that we hadn't thought about before this time. So I want to kind of talk about the name of this podcast, the running aspect of things. Now, you love triathlons and running. So if you had to pick one of those, or you had to pick a distance, what would be your favorite?
Mm-hmm. I'm probably going to default and just say the half.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm definitely not it's funny. I still struggle at times with saying that I'm a marathoner.
Mm. Why is that?
I think it has more to do with experience, but then I just don't have enough under my belt to where I feel comfortable that I can go out, train effectively for a marathon and be okay. And that has a lot to do with me and experience, and just how I have high expectations of myself.
So I think a lot of people will relate to that, because I think a lot of people listening often feel they don't fit into that, either the runner category itself or marathoner, particularly because I understand, with me being a former elite runner, people often struggle thinking, well, I'm not at that level. So, how many have you done? And for anyone listening, if it wasn't you and they said they'd done the same amount of marathons as you, would you be telling them that they were a marathoner?
I feel like you're my therapist. Okay. So, so here are two things. The things that I say and tell people, oftentimes I still struggle with saying that to myself. That's an honest one. The secondary thing is, my therapist asked me a really good question. She was like, so who told you that? And how did you come up with that? So in my mind, no one told me that I wasn't a marathoner or that I wasn't experienced enough. And that's the honest truth. No one has ever told me that. But and I'm pretty sure most of the audience, especially people who follow me, it is and also because I'm in marketing, it is so much in the running community that everything is about being fast or like professional athletes. And don't get me wrong, I have so much respect and know tons of professional athletes, marathoners, runners, past, present, and those who are coming up, and have the most respect for them. It's hard because you don't see someone who, I guess I would consider myself that middle pack everyday person. I'm not super, super slim and look like a runner. I have boobs.
You do look like a runner. I'm just going to...
Quotation marks.
I know what you mean.
Quotation marks. We don't see those things. We don't see what I see at the end of the finish line when I'm volunteering, or even the time frame that I finish in. We don't see those on ads. You don't even see that even on at being a Garmin ambassador. I remember people, they showed my time for a 10K, and I hit a PR on a 10K. And there were a few people who commented, and you know how that is on the internet, and they said that wasn't a good time. And I get that. But what is so amazing is that one person or two people who are talking about my time not being good, the amount of people who come in and say, oh my gosh, that is my goal. And they inbox me and they're like, I'm so glad they featured you or showed that. And so that's been the most impactful thing, is to see the more that I share my times or share my goals or even myself, the people who want to see that, the people who need it. And honestly, I am a marathoner. I have to say, what gets in my head is that I have some amazing friends, my run family, who, I mean, it's kind of hard when most of your run family is they're finishing like their 100th half marathon, or they've already finished six stars or 7 continents. They're up on their 50th marathon. So those are like my friends. And so when I compare myself, I'm like, baby of the group, experience wise, but I've been around them, I've supported them. And so their experience and knowledge has definitely rubbed off on me and inspired me more than anything. So to answer the other question you said, I have technically 5 marathons.
Wow. Yes, you are definitely a marathoner and experienced, I would say, with that.
I finished what I think I said in my bio or to someone. I was like, I'm 4 in 10K. I did Boston 2 years ago, which was the huge tsunami and rain and all that stuff that happened. And I got my first DNF. So, it's Boston. If you're going to DNF the first time, and that was the year I was with my mother. So, I mean, you still have it. I still have my bib, the jacket and everything. So clearly I have to be back. And I love the race itself. So
Yes, for sure. And that's why I wanted you to talk about that for a minute, because it's very, as you said, we're very good at talking to others, but talking to ourselves differently, and not giving ourselves enough credit and saying the exact things to ourselves that we say, don't you dare say that to others. And that's why I wanted you to mention it, because, we're so often we use these kind of just statements. I'm just this, I'm only this. If I could reach this, then I would be this. But really, as you said, you've done 5 marathons, you have done all these different races of varying distances, and you see yourself as a runner, whereas not everyone manages to do that. But we all look so critical of ourselves. And as you said, comparing to other people. So I'm glad you talked about that, because, you saying about your 2:35 half marathon goal, it was 2:35, right? Or was it 2:30?
Well, I got to get to 2:35 to get to 2:30.
Okay, so yeah. 2:35. And I'm sure for a lot of people listening, that is their goal too. And one of my goals with this podcast is to make it so that everyone can see that we all struggle with that confidence aspect. And so thank you for sharing that. So how did you get started in running or triathlon, whichever came first?
Okay. So running technically came first. I had track and field back in maybe middle school, but I was more of a field person. So by nature, I would run for warm-ups or things like that. But I really loved the disc, shot put, all of that, and did that in high school. And then the latter part, I think it was when I was 17 or 18, my now godmother, Debbie, she would always do something, quote unquote, called the Susan B. Coleman 5K. Oh, yeah. Had no idea what it was back then. We're going back now 2 decades ago. So I know in my pictures I look super young, but we're going back to high school. And I still have the little button of us together, and I ended up doing it with her for the first time. So I had to be going into my senior year. Yeah, I was going into my senior year, so I had to be 17. And I did it for her. I did it. She did leave me. I got lost. It was thousands of people. I didn't know anything. I didn't have the right shoes. I was out there like, oh, well, I think we run a mile, in track and field or whatever. I was doing aerobics a lot, started taking my fitness kind of serious and getting into it because she's also a aerobics instructor. And then I was going vegetarian too. So I was all into it. Going
vegetarian, like to be good at running?
No,
or just in general?
Vegan. And so I was, that was my time. I have this thing about meat and I go in and out. And so I just decided to be vegetarian. It was easier and I had access at the time to be vegetarian. So I wanted to do it and see how, and I felt better.
Okay. I was just checking it wasn't to do with the running. Like that was the reason. Okay.
Those things that I learned then, I still do now. Me being vegetarian actually has improved and helped me a lot in my running, but we can talk about that later. So that I did, that I completed my first 5K. So that was 2001. And I didn't do another race for years. So I was like, oh, I'm good. I was sore.
Because it was so bad or just you didn't have anything to come up?
I was so overwhelmed because it was so many people.
Oh.
I didn't know anything about training. All I see is all thousands of people, and I just followed everyone. I didn't know anything, and I got lost. And then the best part was just the ending was this huge VIP thing with all this food and music. And I just thought, this huge post-race party, this is what y'all do? Oh, I want to do a 5K again. And so that was I thought it was just a one-time thing. That's it. I knew that she was running them. I knew, she biked and everything. She had her Cannondale bike, her trainer in there, all of those stuff. And eventually that impacted me to I actually did a duathlon first and didn't complete it. I forgot that I didn't. So now I'm like, I got to go back and do one now next year. And because I didn't complete it, just because I didn't have the right tools and understanding knowledge. It wasn't that I didn't work. It wasn't that I didn't have, I didn't know how to bike. I've been biking since God knows, I don't know how long. It wasn't that I didn't know how to run or I didn't train for it or anything. I trained for months and I didn't meet the cutoff. And it was mainly because I didn't have the proper bike. And then the second thing was the knowledge of of what it takes to do the brick workouts together effective. So in any time that I fail something or don't complete a goal, I tend to sulk for a bit, and then I become all in. Like I make a high. So that higher goal was like, bump the duathlon. I'm going to do a triathlon. Now that also meant that I had to learn, I think I was 25 to learn how to swim. Mm-hmm. So I had an amazing boss. And I learned after all this that she was the Ironman champion. And so she was like, I feel so bad because I thought you already knew this. And I was pretty much saying, oh no, I'm Black. Like we don't do this type of stuff. I don't know anyone. And I was like, can you help me? I really want to do this. And I want to do a triathlon. So myself, my coworker joined in, and I took swim classes at the local community college, which I still recommend, the best swim classes to date. I took Terrified in water. That was my first class. And I worked my way up in January to May. And I did my first try. And then I have done 5 of them. Wow. I eventually will get back, but then I start hanging out with a bunch of marathoners, then a half marathon, and it's a slippery slope.
Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, my friends, I told you about the previous coupon code. We have now changed that. So for those of you who have been a fan of Tracksmith for way longer than I have, from the very early days of the brand, I know there's many of you listening who are those first supporters of the brand, I do now have a coupon code for you. I know you were feeling left out before. So if you use code FORREAL15, that's FORREAL 15, you can get $15 off your first purchase of $75 or more. Now, I've told you about how much I love the clothes. I've told you about how I'm always wearing the Twilight tank, the Horizon tank, the session shorts all day long in just my daily life so that I can switch from mum mode to exercise mode really quickly. They're really cute clothes. They're simple and just really effective, made of nice materials. I've told you about all that stuff, but I've been starting to tell you a bit about some of the other things Tracksmith is doing beyond just kind of those basic being a brand that provides products for us kind of things. They have actually now created a run commute set of clothes, which are fantastic. I love the idea that Tracksmith is encouraging people to run to get from point A to point B, as it kind of should be, rather than us driving to the gym or driving to work when it's not very far away. Now, as people are starting to get back to work and starting to travel more to their workplaces that are locally, this is a great time for you to be using their Run Commute collection. They have thought really hard about this stuff. It is functional. It is great quality, as with all the Tracksmith stuff. And I really think you're going to enjoy it. If you are someone who runs to work or has the potential to run to work, this is the great opportunity for you to give it a try. So be sure to check out their Run Commute selection of clothes there. And then also the amateur support program. I don't think I've mentioned this to you on the podcast yet, but they are now doing a support program for people who are going for the US Olympic track and field trials. They will give people a quarterly gear stipend, a membership to their Hair AC club, mentorship, competition support, and more. That's just for people who are up and coming, those athletes who are well on their way. And it's those who are focusing on the US trials and are just, putting in the work every day. The people who are digging down deep to find the time within their own lives, but still trying to work a full-time job or have a family or whatever. I really think this is fantastic what they are doing. And I think you should read up a bit more on that if you have not already. Now, one final reminder, you can get $15 off your first purchase of $75 or more by using code 4REAL15. That's $15 off your first purchase of $75 or more using code 4REAL15.
I took swim classes at the local community college, which I still recommend, the best swim classes to date. I took Terrified in water. That was my first class. And I worked my way up in January to May. And I did my first try. And then I have done 5 of them.
Wow.
I eventually will get back, but then I start hanging out with a bunch of marathoners, then a half marathon, and it's a slippery slope. So,
yes. Yes, for sure. Runners definitely rub off onto each other and make it hard to want to do anything else. Obviously, this year being a little bit different as we're all separated, but I definitely could see how that would be the case. Now, just kind of going a bit deeper now. I had Aaron and Joshua Potts from Two Black Runners on the podcast a few weeks ago, and they were talking about the impact that not seeing other Black role models had. So not seeing people in media and in images, did that affect you when you first were doing the Susan Komen 5K? Like, were you looking around and not seeing anyone who looked like you? Do you think any part of that put you off, or you not running before that point when you were even in high school? Do you think you could have given distance running a try had you seen other people doing it, or how do you think that comes into play?
Yes. The first thing was I did the 5K because my godmother is Black, and a few other people that were running along were also Black. Okay. So to me, it at first was kind of foreign that, we don't run, we don't do 5Ks. But indirectly growing up, cross country and being Black, it was pretty much separate. The track and field team was track and field, anything 800 and below, honestly, 200 and below at that time, or 400, were mostly Black people. And cross country, and, what in my head was like, oh, they're looping all the time around the around the track, aka the 1600 meters. And those were for whites. That's just what I'm used to.
I think it still kind of is that. As much as we're hopefully trying to change it, but it still is.
I think slowly now, if you look at it now in the Olympics, the only reason why it's increased is not from an American perspective, but you have the Africans, the entire continent and all the different countries that have now increased and taken on to those into those distances. So, but in terms of things in here in America, it's still like that. That understanding, as I clearly started as being a triathlete, it was even less. The reason why I got into running was actually because I found another Black person at a triathlon. And so she was like, oh, my husband and all these people, they are, part of this organization that helps with Black marathoners. And that is really how I started this, increase into running. But as with most people in endurance, yes, I was a triathlete and still am. I say semi-retired, but we know that's gonna come off pretty. With anything, it's like, you may drop running, but you'll pick up, cycling and swimming, endurance. So we're just all one big family. And that's what it was. I was not really interested in being a marathoner because I was too big. I was short. I knew that I was built physically and mentally for sprints. That was it. The most, I mean, that was it. I was for 100, 200 meters and that's it. Being around that organization, even though I've stepped down from being on the board and being in that capacity, that's really what set that fire. From me already being an influencer, being a triathlete, and helping Black women with their hair, which was a huge thing that I was doing. And then diving into the running community, the National Black Marathon Association, being on their board, then establishing here locally with running clinics, even working with Black Girls Run locally. And still supporting, Black Girls Run to this day on a national level. So while I'm kind of this hub of, hey, how can I help you now? Because I feel like just being able to help various organizations, which is where I'm stepping into next, and helping them with their marketing and digital aspects, but then also connecting with corporations and their ambassadorships and making sure that they have great ambassadors that are natural for them and are color. That is a huge area that is missing, because in order for people to see more diversity, to see more Black people that reflect in them in the marketing, there has to be somebody or some company that can talk to the two sides. And so that is where I've taken my place in a saying, I've been around on all areas. I've worked with just about everybody in this organization. I know all of the Black organizations and pretty much I'm like, just kind of this neutral ground where I love good vibes, great marketing, and just great, experience overall. Why not connect the two kind of in a dating sense? So yeah. I agree with them that, as I used my example before, it wasn't until I actually met and saw people then with the organization that I even realized that not only could I do a marathon, but I could do like the Boston Marathon. I never thought about the Boston Marathon until I did Richmond Marathon and I met, we call him Mr. Boston. He has qualified, I think he's getting up to 30. So qualifications. He's been at Boston at least the last 3 decades. Isaiah Douglas, he is Hall of Famer, fantastic man, and has, because of him and his story, I think he's done 18, 17 and counting, still completing Boston. Sometimes he decides not to run, but he still qualifies, still completes them. And if he doesn't run them, he is there at their Speedy 5K, which is amazing. But he has opened the doors up for countless other Black marathoners who are now achieving Boston year after year. Some of those people, we call another person call her Miss B or B Sting. I've lost count on her, but she's probably at 10 Bostons and counting. They're cousins. And so she is so amazing about encouraging of what it takes to achieve a Boston Marathon. Yeah. People like that, and they're all Black and they are just amazing. I help out every year with the Boston Marathon Meetup group. And like I said, they kind of taken me in. That's an extended family. And every weekend, just to be able to have, I think the last time we had over 100 Black people. Yeah, we've outgrown our space. It was beyond the capacity now. But the BAA supports what we do. We have Howie that comes through and Meb every year that supports us. Tons of people from the organization, and simply was handing out flyers saying, hey, you're here in Boston and you're a Black Boston marathoner. Come to our meetup. It started with 20 people and now it's over 100 and counting. So that is a shift, because I watched the Boston Marathon documentary, loved it, but was also disappointed that the people that was featured and we think are so amazing. I'm like, I see these people who do that day in and day out and then some. To say, oh, someone's a 4-time Boston Marathoner and they're, in the news and the paper. And I'm like, I can call up 10 people right now who are Black who could do it. And it's not me, but it's just like, that's the amount of people that are around, but they don't ever get a chance to get those deals or to get in the newspaper, or organization, will kind of do things to belittle the person's, what their achievement is and only put the organization. So I want to make sure that their voices are shown and said on everything, and to be around those people like that. Those are the influencers. Those are the people that are impacting the sports, and their voices should be heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. And I will certainly look to get some of them on the show in the future. Now you've mentioned them. And okay, other than what I just mentioned there, like, what can be done about that? I mean, you obviously said that things are gaining momentum, and I'm sure this time we're going through right now is making every organization, every brand, every person, or most people, consider kind of what they can do, their part, and how they can, move this change of systemic racism, of how we can kind of dismantle it. So is there anything that you can think of that can be done to, other than featuring those voices and like you said, kind of digging a bit deeper than going for the easy grabs who everyone already knows? Well,
part of it starts with me. I'm one, if I say that there is a problem, I'm either very solution oriented. So the first thing, probably by the time this podcast launch, I will officially launch what's called Run Influencer, where I am actually helping to teach marketing and feature runners of color. And, when you see what I do, the pictures, how I schedule, those basic things that are normal for me, and how I have, media kits and brand things. Most runners are like, we don't know. We just want to work with Honey Sting, or we want to work with Noon. And I'm like, that's great. But like, the return on investment, or are they actually just using you just to use you for your network? What are you getting back? And so some of those questions that, they think it's free stuff, but there's more, because they're actually very valuable, and especially now. So how can they maximize their voice and value? But also, companies should be, one company in particular I saw, they still were not featuring amazing people that they had that were ambassadors. They were still trying to feature, their professionals. I'm like, no, you have people who are, if I say that I know one of your ambassadors have finished 100 half marathons, and you have not, and they've been an ambassador for now 3 years with your company, and they're not on your website or on your social media, that is a huge disconnect. That's a huge disconnect. And one, you're not following your ambassadors. Two, you're only just thinking of them for free products and sharing, your promotion, but there's no relationship. The other end is me being a person in marketing and understanding the numbers, the data, the analytics, and the return that they need, is showing them and saying, hey, your pool of ambassadors, yes, you have 1,000, but you could maximize it more if you cut that in half and had better quality instead of quantity. Yeah. Or, even sharing at how they're using them with people of color, doing various, things. And so connecting with them. Yeah. So I think this is where that hub is coming together. And then the other thing is just people speaking up more. I know in the running community, we often kind of just surface level. Everybody's talking about getting faster, whatever diet plan for, a race or a long run. And then whatever the latest, watch or, hydration or product, that's very surface level. I think it's definitely time to encompass and evolve for races, as well as all the running type of companies that are involved, that they really look around and ensure that they are understanding their audience. That's something, and understanding them at a deeper level. One company I particularly spoke about and said, you have a line that is, only geared, well, every run company right now has a line that's, lime green and for running in the dark. And I said, you are only selling that in the fall and winter, and that's just because you guys have normally done that. If you actually listen to your audience and had a great variety of true runners from different backgrounds, ethnicities, everything, inclusivity, you would have heard 5 years ago and even to today of us saying, give us this line throughout the year. Mm-hmm. I'm in Texas. It is 90 degrees when I wake up. So, when I run, I'm actually running at 3-4 o'clock in the morning to beat the heat. That's very normal for us. And I'm, again, air quotes on that normal, but that's a normal life for us here in the South and in the hotter climates. So that line that Brooks, Nike, Adidas, all of them have that line, but they've never marketed or listened to us in particular and said, hey, maybe we should have this, not just in the wintertime, because there's actually a need throughout the entire year. Yeah. Safety. And so it's those type of things that companies, when they're marketing, they just simply overlook because they're using, such and so research or doing those strategic things. And I'm like, I'm a pace leader. I'm an influencer. I'm a marketing person. And I'm telling you, this is not what, we don't use those things like that.
Yeah.
And that's the part of when you step out and you add that human aspect, you add in diversity, you add in inclusivity and experience. Now I'm representing people, not just, Black runners, but I'm talking pretty much, I think everyone can understand and say, you know what? Yeah, I have ran early in the morning and that would be good for me, not just in the wintertime.
All right, friends, it's that time of the episode where I tell you about a Black-owned business that I am featuring for the week. This is the third, I believe, episode that I will be doing this. Last week, we featured TaylorMade. The week before that, we featured Heel House. And today, I am excited to feature Be You for Life, which was actually recommended to me by Alex today. So we have a Black-owned business that she feels passionate about. She was excited to share with me about. And I have been in contact with the founder, Sandra, and she has just been really kind and sweet and just great to interact with. So I'm pretty excited to be highlighting this business today. So Be You for Life is an apparel company primarily, but also a brand. She is working to make a grassroots movement for Black self-awareness and self-confidence, which, as you can imagine, I absolutely love. Her clothing is an outward-facing platform, and she has a podcast called BU365. So you can look that up, BU365, which is an internal customer-facing platform where she is sharing inspirational thoughts, motivational conversations, interviews to bring awareness to issues and to provide a platform for her listeners to start this journey of self-improvement. Now, you can imagine that definitely speaks to me. It's something I'm very excited about. And I love that this is primarily focused on helping Black women to feel this way, to feel empowered, to find that self-awareness. But I don't think that means that it is just for Black women. I would love for all of my listeners to go check out. So firstly, her podcast, Being You 365. That's Being You 365. You can find it on all the usual podcast platforms. And you can also, learn about Be You for Life apparel, which is a women's clothing brand. And it has plenty of cute outfits for you that you can go check out. They're really kind of empowering for women, which you will not be surprised to hear based on what I've already told you. And there's lots of bright colors, lots of kind of empowering things to get beyond just for running outfits. There's masks and caps and just gaiters and shirts and all kinds of things. So I'm really excited to highlight Be You for Life apparel, which is spelled BEYOU 4, that's the number 4, Life, LIFE, apparel, that's APPAREL, buforlife.com. That's BU4lifeapparel.com with the number 4. And you can go check out her clothing. You can check out her ambassador program. She has a fashion lookbook, which kind of gives you a closer look on the clothes that she is offering. And as I said, just a great place to build confidence and another great Black-owned business that we can support and help during this time. So go check out BU4Life. And I want to thank Sandra for being so welcoming towards me doing this, and Alex for giving me the shout out of who to do.
I'm a pace leader. I'm an influencer. I'm a marketing person. And I'm telling you, this is not what, we don't use those things like that.
Yeah.
And that's the part of when you step out and you add that human aspect, you add in diversity, you add in inclusivity and experience. Now I'm representing people, not just, Black runners, but I'm talking pretty much, I think everyone can understand and say, you know what? Yeah, I have ran early in the morning and that would be good for me, not just in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a very summer thing. So.
Yeah, well, 2 things with that. One being, I think everyone listening can relate to, I actually tried many times to tell some of the brands I worked with years ago that it's all very well and good you picking these, cut, lean, professional athletes as your representatives. Yes, they are inspiring, but at the same time, the people that you're targeting, the everyday runner, is not going to say, well, if I put that band on my wrist, I'm going to look like them, or I'm going to run as fast as them. You need to have people who look like the people that you're targeting. And like you said, people to make that inclusivity, to really give yourself a wide variety of people rather than just picking that same white, skinny, blonde male or female who you use for that. So thank you for mentioning that. And 2, I heard Myrna Valerio talking about on Rich Roll's podcast, talking about how she also always wears bright clothing, partly for safety, being a Black woman, because sometimes, white women usually can feel threatened by seeing a Black person out running and thinking, what are they doing? Whereas if she's wearing bright clothing, it's less likely that it's more likely that people are going to think, oh, she's out running. Does that come into it at all?
The same with me. I spoke out about how the Ahmaud death and that situation hit me. And I opened up and shared, really, that's been my life for probably the last decade when it comes to what I experienced as a runner. And I very candidly said, I believe, even on video and on a few Instagram posts, and of course, clearly on Twitter, but the biggest thing is when I and many other Black runners, before we step out of the door, our barrier is actually within our own house. One, we are thinking about what we're going to wear in that way. So I tend to have, if I wear Black, then I have a Boston Marathon cap that's Black. I have something that has run or runner marathon a race.
And this is a conscious choice every time you get dressed.
This choice, and it means whatever I'm purchasing has a thought too. I even bought a tank, that is from Brooks. And while it's very cute and everyone loves it, I bought it mainly for a safety reason. It has runner on there. No one thought that I bought a tank from them just because of runner and it was cute. It was actually so that I could wear the tank for safety reasons, so people could see that I was just the runner and not running from anything or running to get anybody or anything like that. Most runners never would even consider that or even thought about that.
Yeah.
And so that is already one huge barrier. Then the safety things of, buying a pepper spray. Now we have the female aspect of that. And so, okay, what kind of pepper spray? If I get Black, they might think it's a gun or something else that's negative. So I tend to buy pepper sprays again in loud, bright colors in the hope that it would not be seen as something in a negative way or something that is harmful. Mm-hmm. So, rocking purple, lime green, you name it, I probably have it in that color.
Yeah.
And those are things from emergency contacts on, my Garmin, on every single run that I have, biking, any time that I leave outside the door, I have my emergency contacts that get that beep every time, because I don't know if anything should happen. And most of the time, I'm not really worried about if I will fall out or pass out or health things, which is normally the thing that you should do. I have my road ID, those things on, but it's more of if something should happen, the cops or somebody calls the cops, or, I'm passing even in the neighborhood and I might stop to tie my shoe. I have to make sure that I'm really placed in a way that they can visually see that I'm really stopping to tie my shoe and not anything else. So I won't stop by cars. I'll make sure that sometimes I'm even in the street in a way, which is not really the safest, but to make sure that there is more space and that I'm away from the house and not thinking that I'm going to burglarize it.
I mean, that is just perfect examples of white privilege, isn't it? That's things that, I have been in this past year where I've been doing the work, but I mean, I would have never thought about that before. And I bet people listening are kind of shocked hearing you say that. But, these are perfect examples of white privilege, aren't they? That, we would never think about.
And these are things that, when we get together, we have, meetups, like I hung out with Chicago Black runners group in Chicago. We talk about, or we have a moment where we can all breathe, because it's a moment that we don't have, people questioning us if we're in the race. That's things that I had. I've had that in several races where I'm clearly wearing a bib and I'm being questioned if it was my bib and if I'm in the right place. And I'm like, I've ran this race and I know that there's volunteers and they're doing the job. The only time, and I think I said this on Instagram, the only race and the only time that I've ever felt actually safe when running was at Marine Corps Marathon last year, which is to say a lot, because once it was raining and Noah's Ark was basically there. I did not have a single issue. It's probably why I've fallen in love so much with that race, but I didn't have a single issue. No one questioned me. It was beyond supportive. I was inspired from the moment I touched down to even now. Mm-hmm. And maybe it was because there was so much security. I could breathe and know, I'm good. I didn't have to worry about a bombing. I didn't have to worry about someone bothering me with a bib, because if you made it past all of that security, you're here to run and that's it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was the monument. I don't know what it was, but it was the first time ever in my career of over a decade in being in the running community that I felt safe.
Wow.
And that is scary.
Yeah.
But kudos to the organization. But it's scary that it takes basically the military make me feel safe as a runner.
Yeah. It's shocking. And thank you for sharing that. I know that it's obviously not easy for you to go through, and to hear that you're going through that all the time. And even if you take the bib thing, I mean, thinking about someone, if that was their first race and someone came up to you and said that, I mean, even if you just said whatever, like, I'm not letting this affect me, would you want to go back and do that again? If let's say you didn't have great role models like you have or people around you, I don't know if we would, because you'd be like, well, if I can't even run in a race where I've got a bib on my chest, like, yes, it's just, I mean, these are all, I don't want to say good examples, but these are all examples of things that, we need to change in the running industry, and we need to educate people. And thank you for being honest about that. And one other area related to this that I want to talk about, we were talking about clothes earlier. What about like body shape? A lot of the running clothes, I'm assuming, are made with white people bodies in mind. How have you found that? And do you see changes coming in that area too?
I am more hopeful, optimistic. I think change at the end of the day with our community comes from a financial perspective. Mm-hmm. So it's bad, but people and Nike didn't have a plus size just because it sounded good. A plus size is because they saw the need and that they were the only one. And so if you ask for this and these other companies are making money, then you end up increasing in an area where they were decreasing. Mm-hmm. So the money, frankly, if there's any companies there, is there. If you can't say, oh, we want to promote something being healthy, and you're promoting, skinny, thin, blonde hair, but you're omitting all the people who are trying to get there, get to that size, to overweight or obese or tall, long, or whatever if you're on the heavier side and you're trying to get thinner, you got to have gear that is, 1, 2, 3x, and it baffles me that they overlook the obvious. So I am hoping that moving forward, that more companies are starting to lay the groundwork, because I know some of the changes in some, it does take a while. But then also I do see changes. One in particular, I have a very unique relationship as an ambassador with Brooks or any company that I actually work with. I do not become an ambassador unless I actually can impact and make change. Mm-hmm. Some of the change I don't really publicly speak about, but I'm allowed to either do things on my own with their support, or am giving feedback to help that on the back end, which means I have NDAs in place and I don't want to get sued on those things. But the one thing that I have with Brooks is that Brooks and REI have supported me the last couple of years with what's called my brunch and bra thing, where really I was like, hey, y'all have this huge thing about inclusivity, and everyone that I know needs a sports bra, but they are very disconnected to the REI outlet or person. They don't feel comfortable talking about what their needs are. And as an employee, sometimes, frankly, if you don't know how it is to be a runner with big boobs, you have a disconnect, and it's totally okay. So how can I solve this, in a fashion where I can help women just simply gain the knowledge? If I can teach you and you have the knowledge, then that helps you tenfold. That's what's needed in this industry. Mm-hmm. And so I think with them, Brooks has been a leader in sports bra. So it's an amazing relationship that I have with them and their bra team, which I annoy left and right. But I get to actually have my own events and focus on the bras that are not just new, but also for women who have larger breasts and are runners. So if I can get you one bra that that you can run in.
Oh, it's a game changer. Yeah.
And then I take that further by ensuring that I have, digital things such as sports bra guides, which I'm finalizing that right now for the fall, and even updating and sharing other bras that maybe I don't feel comfortable running in or not, geared towards me, but I'm still testing, I'm still out there and sharing that to help answer those questions. Mm-hmm. That's what's needed. And then I take that back and say, hey, these are things that women are needing. They need larger size, or your straps from everyone, they told me they're falling down, because I'm trustworthy and honest, a person, or try to be. Yeah. So those are just some of the things that I know personally I'm doing, and I'm hoping and can see from my point of view that the community is doing. But I think it's going to take people like myself. It's going to take us talking to them and sharing what our needs are and being honest. And the more that we are honest about it, the more that we can increase. I think the companies are turning a tide and helping out.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm glad you're doing your part to be a part of that change. That's awesome. Okay. So just to wrap up here with one final area. So one more thing that you do, you're a fit hair expert, and you have your Sporty Afros hair care line. Now, again, with that episode with Joshua and Aaron, they talked about exercising for Black women is not as simple as going out to run, just because of the care that's needed with hair. And so can you kind of explain to us what is meant by that? Why can't, I have curly, frizzy hair myself. And so I kind of understand it on a minuscule level. But for someone, listening who maybe has like straight, thin hair, who's never going to have come across this situation, why is it more than just, it gets a bit sweaty, I let it dry, and then it's fine. Or I just wash it and then it's fine.
So when I talked about being a triathlete, that was during my Sporty Afros phase. So we had I had my business partner at the time. I was the other triathlete. And so we ended up creating a line because back then there really wasn't anything that was helping us train and was focused on women who worked out. Mm-hmm. So one of the things when you're a triathlete, you're swimming. So that's a different, your hair is different. On that, you're biking, which, it's under a helmet and you're biking longer. And then you're running, which is maybe you're wearing a hat, maybe you're wearing a visor or not. But if you think about it in hair points of views, you have swimming, swim caps, you got to wash, chlorine, the helmet, the biking, all of those. Those are three things that are hitting your hair. And if it's a brick workout, those are, you're doing them back to back or you're doing all three in one day. Well, in particular, at the time, there was a lack of just hair knowledge for Black women. Most people don't even know about taking care of their own hair outside of going to a beauty salon, getting it colored or cut, and then washing it. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more that goes into the aspects of our hair. And it is also an emotional aspect that's even deeper. Just even right now, we're in 2020, and it's sad to really say that in, say, Jamaica, they have allowed for schools to ban children or expel children and require them not to have locks, which, some people say dreadlocks or locks, but that in and of itself, as a person who now is officially locked in my hair, and I've changed my hair quite often, but this particular, that hurts. So this is still happening, that legally someone is telling me, my kid, cousin, brother, whomever, if you have this hairstyle, you cannot attend our school. That here, even in the States, is an issue too, because, employers in different countries prefer for your hair to not look the same way. Mm-hmm. So a lot of different styles are things that say, if they are required professionally for us to have straight hair, if my hair is straight and my options are, I have two ways of even a perm for us means straight hair, whereas a perm for typically someone who has straight hair who's white means that it's curly. It's kind of reverse, but it's way more chemicals, and it ends up being where it hinders your hair, because if I sweat, then my hair begins to revert back to its original natural pattern of whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So it might be tightly coiled hair, or it might be looser depending on where they are in that spectrum. So you can already see that if your professional, job, your 8 to 5 or whatever, is requesting and requiring you to have straight hair, and then you work out every day, your hair has now messed up and impacted your professional. So now you have to find ways around that. And that's been what we've done for decades. But it's come to a point where now you add, an endurance aspect on it, like running for hours. Well, that changes the health of your hair. That changes, what your regimen is. So that's what I spent time is creating an actual regimen where I could work out in the morning, prep my hair, had certain products that I would use, and then would go on and would be able to go into my 8 to 5, which, professional, wear heels, all that kind of stuff. So, or reverse. And those are the things that, made me kind of this fit hair expert, and even helping women understand, even if you don't have natural hair or black hair, you still should take care of your hair. You still should be getting it cut. You still should, lay off all of the headbands or keep up with it, because it's still a part of you and it's coming from you. So that's the part that many people don't realize what it takes.
Yeah. It's not even just about the exercise itself and the sweat, but it's kind of the knock-on effects and the money that needs to be invested from that, the time that needs to be invested in that. So thank you for sharing that. All right, Alex, where can people find you and follow you in the future if they want to learn more about you?
Very, very simple. I'm very active on Instagram. So alexandriawill.com. So Alexandria, like Alexandria, Virginia or Louisiana, wherever you are at in here, or Egypt if you're overseas, and will, so like the will to live, and .com. It's Instagram, Twitter, all of those type of things. And honestly, I do respond to emails as well. So any questions that you have, everything is Alexandria Will on all platforms.
Well, you made it nice and easy for yourself. That's awesome that you managed to get all those handles. I'm quite jealous. Right. Well, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your wisdom and being vulnerable with us. I appreciate you and all that you're doing, and I'm sure the audience do too. We look forward to seeing where you nudge those brands to go in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Truly appreciate it. Just being on here. Thanks again.
My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, aka iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. Pretty insightful, huh? I never would have thought about a lot of those things. And that just goes to show the privileged viewpoint that I was looking at that I was standing in, I guess, before this interview and before I started doing this work. But I really appreciate Alex for her honesty, for sharing with us, and just for kind of cracking us open in the way that she is able to make us see things a bit differently. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. I definitely did. And I want to thank Alex for coming on the show today. Now, next week, we will be talking to Takia McClendon, who is one of the co-founders of City Fit Girls. If you live in Philadelphia, you definitely need to listen up. But even if you don't, she is offering plenty of resources online, and especially in this world that we live in, there is no excuse not to be a part of it. We're going to be talking a lot about kind of feeling left out and feeling like you don't belong in the running world, because I think many of us deal with that in some way or another. And we do struggle with our confidence as runners. So I think her message is going to be really inspiring and something that we can all think more about as we move through this new world that we're living in. So I'm just going to let you know that you can find links to everything we talked about today in the show notes by going to tinamuir.com/episode 202. So that's tinamuir.com/episode 202. And you'll find all those links and also the brands that I am sponsored by, as well as the business that I am supporting in this episode as my part of my commitment to dismantling systemic racism. My friends, have a great week. Be kind to yourselves, to other people, and to our world. And I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.